And in the series finale, as you probably guessed by now, the big announcement that Ted had for Rebecca was this is it. It's his final season. And because of that, Rebecca doesn't even want to talk about it. She doesn't want to think about the club without Ted. So it's going to take her a few days to come around and discuss it with him. It's not like she's mad. She completely understands why he wants to go home. In fact, the whole team does. They just don't want to see him go. That's how popular Ted is. But they do actually have a game to get ready for, and it's a really important game. They're playing West Ham, which is a obviously heated rivalry, but also this could be for the championship. Right now, they're 1 point behind Man City, and if Richmond win and Man City lose or draw, then Richmond is the champion of the league. It's also a bit of a revenge game for a few people. Nate the Great is back, albeit not in an assistant coach role. He's back as the assistant equipment manager. He's actually behind Will. It's also a revenge game for George, the coach that was fired by Rebecca in favor of Ted Lasso. He was hired by Rupert to be West Ham's new coach. And speaking of Rupert, his name is in hot water. Bex has filed for divorce, and his former assistant has filed charges on sexual harassment in the workplace. Plain and simple, Rupert needs this win in order to stay in the Champions League and kind of brush this scandal under the rug. So really, it's a big game for both teams. Everybody arrives at the pitch that day for practice. Trent Krim is excited because he's finally finished his book and he wants Ted and Beer to take a look at it. But up in Rebecca's office, Higgins has arrived with a list of potential candidates to replace Ted. She tells Leslie she's not ready to discuss that maybe after the season. And he's got some exciting news for her, though, that's not Ted-related. The fact that the club has done so well this season means that people are interested in buying the club, at least buying a share. He tells her that she could sell 49%, retain full control, and make a boatload of cash. And with that money, they could make some renovations, buy some new players, the works. And it's an enticing offer, but Rebecca says, what could I possibly get if I sell the entire club? And he tells her $2 billion, which is something she wasn't expecting. But the reason why she's thinking about selling the club is because she wanted this club to ruin Rupert's life, and he's doing a pretty good job of that on his own. She no longer really cares about Rupert, so she doesn't really have a need to keep the club. She kind of would rather just travel the world and enjoy life. She kind of just threw that idea out there, but with $2 billion hanging on the line, she needs to talk to somebody about it, so she goes out to lunch with her mother. As she's discussing this and her mother is imploring her to sell the team, get rid of it, a couple of the supporters come up and they paid for her meal. They did it because they really appreciate what Rebecca has done for the club, but mainly for the town and for them as fans and supporters. They appreciate how much Rebecca cares for the team, and it gives Rebecca a little bit of pause on the whole selling the team thing. But she decides to try to use this offer to sway Ted on his decision. After practice, she gets a one-on-one with him, and she begs him to stay, telling him that if he goes, she goes. She'll sell the club. But if he stays, she'll sell the 49%, and she'll make him the highest-paid coach in the league. She thinks that maybe this kind of offer would be one that Ted would have to go home, sleep on, come back the next day and talk about, but she can tell by his face he's already made up his mind. There's just no amount of money that's going to make it worth staying away from Henry. And he's not about to move Henry and Michelle out to London. As Ted goes to leave the pitch that night, he's walking by the locker room and he notices that Nate is just staring at the wall. He walks in the room and he sees that Nate is staring at where the believe sign used to be. It's a little bit awkward for both of them, but finally Nate starts to apologize and Ted tries to stop him, telling him it's fine, but Nate says, no, I have to do this. And he just cries into Ted's arms, apologizing for everything he did. He feels really, really bad about it. Ted, trying to make him feel better, says, hey, you tore that sign up once. I tore it up twice. It does diffuse any tension in the room. But Ted turns to the wall and says, you know, when I look up there, I still see it. Nate and Ted, though, weren't the only enemies turned friends that had an awkward conversation that night. Earlier in the day, Jamie got approached by Nike to do a photo shoot, and he needed a PR rep. He thought Keely would be perfect. So he pulled her out in the hallway. He had a conversation with her, but that conversation was seen by Roy. Roy trying to rekindle his relationship with Keely, invited Jamie out for a beer to tell him he's proud of him, but then nicely explain that him and Keely are on the road to recovery, so you might want to back off. But Jamie, finding out that the couple aren't official yet, told Roy, I ain't backing off. And this resulted in a fist fight between the two, where they finally realized, what are we doing? We're not Neanderthals. We should just go have her decide. How nice of them. And that's exactly how Keely took it. Oh, wow. That's really nice of you to let me decide who I'm going to be with. She kicked both their asses out to the street. It's probably for the best because the next day is the big match day. Everybody who's anybody is there, or at least they're watching. Like Dr. Sharon, she's watching. But so are Michelle and Henry. They're watching, and they're extremely invested in the game. But stupid Jake Jacobson, or whatever the hell his name is, he's also watching with them, but he's just belittling soccer the whole time, saying how boring it is and whatnot. For a therapist, the dude just cannot read the room. His Yelp reviews must suck. Back over in the locker room, all the coaches are meeting. Nate walks in to wish everybody luck. And then Roy comes in, and he shocks the entire room when he asks if he can be a member of the Diamond Dogs. And the reason why is because he wants to know if they think it's possible people can change. And it's kind of split, but yeah, for the most part, people do think that it's possible to change. As the coaches are discussing change, Will runs into the locker room because they got a package from Zava. He wants to wish the guys luck, but he's also sent them the biggest avocado you've ever seen. This thing is the size of a small child, like a toddler. This isn't the only reconciliation that goes on in the locker room, though. Danny Rojas does feel bad about breaking Van Damme's face, so he gives him a badass-looking black carbon fiber face mask. Ted then walks in because he asked Coach Beard to make the guys a video. It really just goes through all the highlights of the AFC Richmond team under Ted Lasso. The good times and the fun times. No bad times here. But even though it probably was supposed to be a feel-good moment, it's an emotional moment. And when the guys head out to the pitch, they're not really fired up. They're crying. Maybe it affects them because they enter the half down 2-0. And to make things worse, Man City is up 1-0 in their match. Ted enters the room at the half, but he starts off the halftime speech not about the game, but about thanking the guys, telling them what an honor it was to coach each and every one of them. He truly appreciates them. As for the game, he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he does know one of the beauties about sports is nobody knows what's going to happen. At one point in this speech, he does turn to where the believe sign used to be, but then he remembers it's not there anymore, and he kind of just pivots. But just because the believe sign isn't there doesn't mean it's not in the room. It starts with Sam, who's been keeping a piece of the believe sign in his locker. He stands up and throws it down. That's followed by Jamie, who's been keeping some of the believe sign in his locker. And one by one, all of the players start pulling out the bits of the torn up believe sign. They throw it down on the table, and then they start trying to reconstruct it because, after all, it was torn up. This really motivates the club because they come out playing like their hair's on fire. Doesn't take too long for Jamie Tart to score and make the game a 2-1 contest. Shortly after that, they get a penalty kick. Normally, Jamie or Danny would take it, but they elect Isaac to take it, which is bold because he doesn't take penalty kicks. But it ends up working out. Isaac hits it so hard, he hits it through the damn net. The game is now tied 2-2. Because of this, they need to fix the net. And at this point, Rupert is fed up. His team just blew a 2-goal lead, and he's dangerously close to losing his second Premier League club. So he storms down to the field and demands George take out Jamie Tart. Injure him. And Coach George tells him, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play that kind of game. The two get into a heated argument that ends when Rupert pushes George down, and everybody sees it. It's a really bad look for Rupert, and as he's leaving the pitch, he's serenaded by the fans with the word wanker, which is not an endearing phrase. Doesn't get any better for Rupert, because as the game is tied 2-2 in the 90th minute, Richmond has one final play that could win it. The coaches all huddle up, they start discussing what play they're going to run, and Ted decides they're going to run Nate's play. It works. With just about no time remaining on the clock, Sam threads it through and scores to win the game for Richmond and put them in contention to win the championship. Everybody piles onto the pitch and they start celebrating. It looks like Richmond is going to win this damn thing. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Man City ended up winning their game and thus winning the Premier League championship. Richmond finished second. As for Rupert, he lost his club. But Rebecca decided to keep hers. She sold 49% of it, though, but it was to the fans. She ended up meeting Ted at the airport to wish him goodbye. She's really going to miss him. As she's leaving, though, she watches a little girl fall to the ground, and when she goes to check on her, her dad is running up to them. But it turns out her dad is that dude from Amsterdam. They finally get a formal greeting, and it looks like they can possibly rekindle the magic they had on that boat. As for Ted, him and Beard are on the plane, but Beard decides, I can't do this. He explains to Ted that he wants to stay. He wants to go, run off the plane, and marry Jade. Ted is very supportive of this, but unfortunately the doors have locked, so Beard has to fake a burst appendix. Eventually, he and Jade do end up getting married. Trent Crimm's book does come out, and it's a big success. There was one tiny thing that Ted suggested he change. Originally, the book was called The Lasso Effect, but Ted said, it's not about me. It never was. So instead, Trent decides to rename it The Richmond Way. As for some of the players, Sam Abasanya will be finally living his dream and playing for the Nigerian national team. Jamie rekindled his relationship with his dad, and it seems like things are going to go real well for them. Both of those guys are going to be coached by Richmond's new coach, actually their old coach, Roy Kent. He was officially named the manager of the club. But they did welcome back somebody else, Dr. Sharon, and Roy has taken up therapy with her. They also decided to bring back that belief sign. Beard, Nate, Roy, they just figured it was right. They'll also have to make room at the pitch because Keeley has proposed a women's team for AFC Richmond, and that's something that Rebecca is a big fan of. So that's going to happen next year. And as for Ted, he went home to Kansas City and was welcomed back like a king by Henry. And he was perfectly content, no longer coaching in the Premier League, but coaching Henry's soccer team. And while there's no finale on his relationship with Michelle, Dr. Jacobson's nowhere to be found, so that's good. He can kick rocks. And that is the end of Ted Lasso. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Be nice in the comments section. If I mess something up, hey, it happens. Just hit thumbs down. Keep it moving. I have merch. I have a Patreon. I have a bunch of ways you can give me money. Or you could just let the ads run. That works too. And let me know in the comments if you think this will be the final season. Once again, though, thank you for watching.